Hey everyone, welcome back to another Seattle Data Guide Live. Today we have our guest Richard Meng, who currently is the CEO of Row AI, but before that you were driving a lot of the kind of AI initiatives at Snowflake, and then before that working at LinkedIn. But we'll get into all that. Until then, would love to hear you just say hello to everyone.
Hi, thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah. So I mean, like, just giving you some time to give some background. Is there anything else? Well, how would you describe kind of your background?
I I came to the United States in 2014. Started at UC Berkeley as a computer science and statistics major. That's how initially I got into data, and later went to two jobs at LinkedIn, Snowflake, as you mentioned, and then currently a founder of a very small startup, started in the Silicon Valley.
Yes. Most startups start small, so hopefully it doesn't stay that way. But that's how they do start. In terms of what you do when you're not working, I'd like to ask that question first because I think data can encompass everything that we do. What do you do for fun out there?
Well, in the Bay Area, right, there are pretty much two things you can do, right? First is exercise. Second is going hiking. So I'm that kind of person.
Hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. Go out and go to one of the county parks. You're thinking about life and why do I start this company, etc., etc.
Yes.
Yeah,
I often poke fun at anyone who tells me they go hiking in California, just because I've at this point now I've lived in Seattle and then currently live in Denver, so I'm always like, I mean, hiking, walking. No, I'm kidding. The other thing I remember people really like to do when I was in the Bay was a lot of rock climbing, or at least indoor rock climbing. So
totally.
um, cool. So how? Because you're kind of on the software side, but how did you get into the data side of things?
Yeah, well, that was going way back when I was at school. I remember it was at 2016. I started a research assistant position at. Well, first of all, I'm a statistics major, so initially I try to kind of pull myself into a lot of relevant intern positions and research positions. So I got into this research assistant positions in Haas School of Business. I did the research with the professor Abhishek around the OpenStreetMap research. Remember, the topic was that compare the data quality between OpenStreetMap versus Google Map back in 2016. Bunch of hardware I use, right? We use the supercomputer at Berkeley then, I remember, and run a bunch of Python queries. I remember I have to manipulate a ton of manipulate the hardwares very close to the metal, manipulate the hardwares and send the jobs across those machines and do the map and reduce essentially. So then the other point, the mind-boggling thing for me is the scale,
Hmm.
the data that I can that I can compute. I can control thousands of computers in my little MacBook 14 laptop, make them work for me. So that was kind of magical, and 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 that's how I got into really big data compute at the beginning.
Yeah, that seems somewhat reminiscent. I remember kind of like some of the early days when you did a lot more stuff yourself. I'm sure it's still magical, but I feel like you lose some of the magic the more things get abstracted away,
Mhm.
or maybe it becomes more magical. It's hard to say when you start. Now having already that experience, but yeah, I remember like being able to like run a bunch of computers myself, from one command, like from a few shell commands, SSHing in and doing things of that nature. So that's, I don't know. How do you feel in terms of like things feeling like they're further and further abstracted away? How does that kind of, do you have any thoughts there in terms of like how that either impacts how you learn, or just like how that impacts how you experience working
Mm,
with computers?
yeah. So I think that impacts like I think I really like the way of more and more abstraction because before data, like before abstraction, right? It's more of a lot of the data analysis is more of an engineering challenge, right?
Hmm.
You have initial goal, of what you want to get, right? And that's how I like differentiate between an engineer versus like a data people, where engineers cares about how, throughput, latency, the process. the data people cares about why, and basically the goal. But if the system before the system was like data system was too abstract, it was abstract in a way that it makes it easy for you to run a SQL effectively. You spend a lot of time on wrangling with hardware, right?
Yeah.
Do the throughput, increase throughput, increase latency, make the node live again. So, and during this process, I don't get anything effectively, right? All I'm doing is wrangling the hardwares. So, which is very unproductive in terms of
Yeah.
the results I get. So that's my opinion, and we can get to that in a more in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that kind of like thinking, because that is what one of the big changes that I'd say I went through, right? And in the last decade, seeing that need to think a little less about hardware, like it's still there, but generally a little less. And just, if you have an idea, you can implement it. Versus, again, like you said, spend a month plus or a year plus if you're at a large enterprise trying to, wrangle Hadoop or something like that, just to get that set up. And now it's like, well, what if we didn't have to do that and we could just get straight to work?
Right.
There's this, I worked with someone named Gordon Wong, who talks about that. I want to say when he was at HubSpot, he's like a VP at HubSpot doing data analytics. He talks about how like one team picked Snowflake and one team picked Hadoop. This was early days of Snowflake. And the Hadoop team spent like $3 million, and at the end of like a year or two, kind of got nowhere. And the Snowflake team spent like $1 million, and by the end of like a few months, they were already delivering things. And that's kind of was that state. And that's why I think tools like Snowflake, Databricks, and so on kind of took off so much, because we were it's one of those interesting things where the pendulum shifts. We were like very tired of paying a lot of money for Teradata and Oracle and that stuff. So people went to like Hadoop and more open source, and like, we'll just wrangle it ourselves. And then they went back to like, okay, that takes a long time, so let's go back to like trying different options. So we're kind of back in the abstracted version. We'll see if something replaces it anytime soon. So one of the reasons I kind of brought you on is you've recently made the shift. You were originally again a staff software engineer at Snowflake, driving a lot of kind of AI initiatives, and we'll talk about here in a second. But now you've kind of switched to co-founder. I just want to know, how's that change been?
It's been a big shift. It's kind of North Pole and South Pole. It's quite far distance. Well, on the one hand, first of all, right, I make way less. Make way less than an undergrad who joined a fan company in Silicon Valley today, and so does my co-founder too. And so obviously that's a big revert for me. Well, on the other hand, right, I feel a sense of shift in the responsibility and the knowledge, and I'll explain more. So in terms of responsibility, before the startup, I worked at very big companies. Well, arguably, medium-sized or two big companies in Snowflake and LinkedIn both.
Yeah.
I optimized the function of my team and myself. Right, I know how to operate in a bigger company well, in a way that it can benefit on my own career growth and my team's position in this organization. So, but now my identity is the founder and obviously the CEO role. And important function at this stage of the startup is to make sure the company survive and thrive. So I'm not here for like any salary increase. I'm not here for like a senior staff software engineer title. I'm here for bringing the company to the next stage of the growth. And that shifts like everything I do to move this company like forward every day, every morning. The second is knowledge shifts, right? Before the startup, my role is quite technical, writing design docs, alignment with stakeholders, and deliver, writing code, deliver. Well, this stage right now, it's basically marketing sales, right? Which are completely different from engineering side. Like I literally have a cheat sheet of my mother right now to tell like what I should say before handing up every prospect's call. And I've learned the whole new different industries every day. My home court was the tech industry previously, but it turns out I have to find people in finance and in retail, in the media, even sports and energy industries to talk about, to chat. What are the problems? What are unstructured data problems you have? Like for example, I cannot even imagine how I'm supposed to learn like what is surplus line insurance in my entire life if not being a founder. To be honest, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Like, and in a weird way, it's making you maybe learn your like the technology side almost better because you're starting to learn what people actually care about, right? Because when you work for technology companies, like whether it's LinkedIn or Snowflake in particular, where you just kind of sell a solution, you don't always like know this like what you're selling into, right? Like you said, finance. Well, what does finance care about? Like actually, not there's you can tell them, hey, we have AI, and now they can add AI onto their whatever somewhere that they're going to have a report to the board, and the board will be happy. But at the end of the day, like it needs to translate into dollars, right? And if it doesn't into some sort of outcome that they can then sell and tell that, hey, we did a good job with this project, right? They're going to lose their jobs, or they're going to not look good, and that's kind of like the thinking. So is there anything interesting that you have learned about any of those spaces that
Yeah, I think exactly like what you said, right? Like this allows me to kind of being a founder, like allows me to see through the industry. It's like it's the way I see this is like when we first like look at a company, right? It's like a big onion, and there may be a lot of functions that are doing the work, right? That for example, if you go to one of the the fintech company, they're pretty much like doing a bunch of work, and they have customer service, and they have like their sales team, etc., etc. You might be able to solve some problems in every arm in this organization, but being a founder allows me to see through this like onion, peel off the rings, and then see through the core. So, for example, I learned that from the CTO of a very very big fintech company that does loan, right? So, if you start to a loan fintech, what is our core? What do they care about? Their core mode is actually underwriting, right? Being able to accurately predict, the risks and the reward of each client they underwrite to, and the loan amount, the credits they give to each client. That is our core mode. That's the way. If they lose this, they were not able to do their business. So if you can solve like this problem, especially if I'm selling a technical infrastructural software, it's got to be solving the core problem in this company.
Yeah.
I cannot sell to the customer service, cannot sell data software to a customer service and being like, I'm going to solve like 10% of the problem and I'm going to get like $10,000 in reward. It's more effective in selling to this core function in this group. Like for Facebook, right? What is our, there are a ton of hundreds, thousands of teams in Facebook, but what really matters is the advertisement to be able to make money. That's how their 99 revenue comes from. Right? So if we can solve their advertisement problem, selling a data software to this position, of course, it's another topic of if it's even possible to sell like external data software to Facebook. But this one I get into, yeah.
It is very hard to sell software to Facebook. The few softwares that I know, like when I was there, we had Salesforce and Workday, and I heard at some point they tried to build a Salesforce type solution, and then I think they eventually just gave up and built, went with Salesforce. But overall, they built their own query engine, they built their own, orchestrator. They have Tableau. I mean, maybe they've gone off Tableau since I've been there, but they had Tableau, but they also had their own internal tool that they developed. So yeah, it was a lot of pretty much you're going to have a hard time selling into Facebook. Maybe you'll get bought out. That would be the one hope. I also really like that onion reference because to me it's kind of similar to like people often say like you should ask like 5 whys, like the 5 whys. So I think that like puts it into a better perspective is like really trying to get to the core of the problem. So it's a very good, I think, visual there. So I like that. Cool. So just kind of digging in more to that, AI ML kind of experience. I was actually listening to a chat you were having with Demetrius, and you kind of told a story about a project from a hackathon that became honestly a little bit more. So can you kind of retell a little bit of that story?
Yeah. So that was a quite interesting talk with Mitros. Um, I mean, like for the most part, when I joined Snowflake in 2022, I recall, right, I joined it in October, I think. There wasn't first of all, I joined as a infrastructural engineer in one of the infrastructure team at Snowflake, and I didn't get to work on any AI related stuff. But one day, I think GPT-3 came out, and I was just like doing my own hackathon at my own home in a weekend, and I was like, why not we build something for Snowflake, right? Where people do not need to click the buttons and or write the SQL queries to do their job, but instead they can ask a question and things will just like figure out itself. So I had this idea and then started working on a prototype. I remember I hosted the backend in Firebase and hosted the front end in a random server. And then it's a very sketchy prototype, but I showed to my boss and my escape manager. Yeah. Turns out they really like it, although it's completely irrelevant from what my day-to-day job looked like in my current team. So and they gave me the courage to sort of keep doing it. Don't stop right there, but keep pushing. So I took their feedback and continuously iterate the hackathon prototype, promoted the app to higher and higher level in this organization. And it turns out in one day I got invited to present in front of the SVP of Snowflake, which is quite nervous to me because I've never presented in such a big name before in my entire career. So and turns out that went really well. I think that kind of sparked a lot of interesting conversations. And what happens after that was I got paired with a person called Adrian Choi at Snowflake, which is the founder of Streamlit, which is open source.
Okay. That's cool.
Kind of interesting machine learning kind of data visualization stuff. So we two kind of paired together, and together with the other co-founders, which called Peter, which is another company. So yeah, basically a bunch of people from different organizations partnered together for another 3 months to ship a project that allows Snowflake developers to build AI chatbots on Snowflake using their Snowflake data. And then delivered a speech on the Las Vegas stage in 2023 to thousands of customers. And that was the first big moment of Snowflake AI after the GPT-3 launch. And we are one of the first ones to tell the world that Snowflake is going to the Gen AI space, this data giant. And later, I officially transformed. I officially moved to the team called Niva, which is an acquired company by Snowflake, and who has world-class talents of AI and ML. So joined the team, and we start working on several projects, which is many of you may know is called like Cortex AI, Cortex LLMs. Basically, the in production private text to SQL models, and of course, what people don't see behind the scene is the GPU inferencing powered by Snowflake compute, where ML people and data people can self-host their ML models or any open source models on. So yeah, I've been working on the project for a bit of time, for like almost 7 months, and then decided to join create my own startup at YC.
Yeah. No, I think that's one thing I really like. I think about your story is the fact that you were able to try something, and this is what I think is sometimes harder when you work maybe at traditional enterprise companies, where you can try things like this, but it's just going to be harder to ever show off that value or get buy-in from leadership, because that's not the main focus of your company. Whereas if you work in tech, there's just value, right? Like if you can show like, hey, I built this thing and it could be valuable to us, like they will put support behind it, right? Because it could lead to a project that makes sense. So I think it's really cool that you weren't even on the team dealing with AI. You were able to kind of just test out some ideas and show that, hey, there's a little bit of value here. Like, how do we like kind of keep iterating and building this? And then from there, again, eventually you were partnered with Adrian to really kind of keep going and going and bringing this to fruition. So I think there's something, about that I really wish more companies would push their engineers that way. It's currently mostly big tech, but there's so much value that can be found, I think, in that approach.
Yeah, I think like that's because Snowflake in itself, it's also although it's IPO'd, but in itself I think it's still like has a startup spirit in itself. So lots of team they acquired, or even the founding team, the Benoit and the two founders are both in the company, like still coding. Benoit in theory are both in the company still coding. So I think that kind of startup spirit encourages me to build something on my own and start the internal ventures at Snowflake first.
Yeah.
Go on my internal ventures. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think if I recall, is I just want to make sure before I say something. Where would I might not be able to see it on here, so I'm like I might not find it soon enough, so I might just not go down that route. Just want to make sure I'm just gonna not go down that route just in case. No, so one of the things that I also want to talk about, looking at some of the things you've written in terms of like how you're trying to approach data, specifically unstructured data, and giving people the ability to access it. One of the things I liked about your approach is that you're kind of taking the approach where you want to actually keep data lineage very clear, where it's like, let's try to keep the data that originally created, whatever it might be, in its original format versus, in one of your articles, you kind of write like this vector, RAG and vector search approach, where you kind of just put data into some sort of vector DB and then, ask questions like a chatbot. And instead you're like, well, what if we use, LLM vision to look at a picture, tell us what's in that picture, right? Maybe we tell it specifically look for certain things. And then we can create columns from that and create more of a structured data. So you're taking unstructured data, but making it very easy to approach, especially for people who are going to maybe eventually look at it and write more standardized queries against it. What kind of gave you that idea?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to recapture what you said, right? It's like I think this is more of a I would say maybe it's like less of my idea, but more of like maybe I learned from historical like pattern, where what Snowflake created was a notion of the ELT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before Snowflake, there's a bunch. Basically, you kind of your data warehouse is like a very clean slate of representation of your data, and behind data warehouse. Before data warehouse, there's a tremendous amount of data pipeline that's going on, and to kind of send the clean version of data into your data warehouse. And that was like before Snowflake. But what Snowflake or like other modern data warehouses brought is notion of ELT. You have dirty data in Snowflake. It's okay. And then you start transformation. You start create cleaner and cleaner views on your dirty data. And one of the innovations they've done at the beginning is parsing the JSON out of for some advertisement media companies. And so taken from that kind of experience, historical learnings, right? I've actually done learning how people are using the LLMs in the last 2 years from Snowflake customers and our customers, and we're actually one of the first to use the RAG in production. When I was at Snowflake, and vector search based RAG is a great paradigm where I see the data engineering spends a ton of time build the world's best data processing pipeline to deal with, for example, PDF. And by the way, PDF is probably the most complex data type in the world. It can contain like images, charts, tables, paragraphs, right? All kinds of things, all kinds of multimodality, except the videos. that you can imagine in a single page. And and people want, like, what people are typically doing is, like, today is they want to get as far away as PDF from the PDF as possible, because it's too unstructured, right? Is they try to extract the structured data pieces from the PDF and then throw the PDF away, pretty much, because it's just way too unstructured. And why we're doing it is because data people are really comfortable with operating in a structured data environment, which are totally, like, fascinating. But until, like, recently, I realized this. Like, first of all, for a document, it's really hard to extract, like, everything you can into a structured format. Like, first of all, it's a big headache in terms of how do you model the data, do the data modeling, right? And many of the times, different PDF probably have different information in there in secondary, right? You could theoretically infer infinite amount of things from a single paragraph, right? You could infer the sentiment, you could extract the topicality, you could do the name entity resolution, you could do, like, all kinds of things, and maybe you cannot capture it all at once. So to realize this is, instead of kind of doing that ETL work from the PDF into some structured data points and then store it in data warehouse, why can't we use a similar approach that these great giants took, like, 10, 15 years ago, right? You can operate directly. And now we have this powerful large vision models that can directly understand the PDF as a page, as a single page, or in multiple pages. You could essentially make it in a way such that when you want to extract some insights from the PDF, you just start operate from the PDF, from the raw data. But instead of trying to extrapolate, like, extract everything at the beginning and then do the analysis later on, and they have to work with the chunked, fragmented information you have from the PDF. So that's kind of how my learnings was formed, and we got a lot of successes, a lot of believers in that domain, fortunately. So that's, I'll kind of stop there.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to cover there in terms of, like, how to go about. I do like that point you just referenced about the fact that, usually the way we would do this is we'd use something like an OCR library, or sometimes, if you're lucky, because the PDF was created using some actual tool that's supposed to create PDFs, you can use solutions that parse PDFs very easily. But even then, like you said, we will generally approach it where we parse out that information that we want at the moment, and then throw away the rest, right? Like, or maybe we store the PDF in S3 for good, but a lot of people probably, especially, like, if you're more in the data science, I'm building a notebook, just trying to analyze things right now, you'll kind of get rid of that PDF and just go forward with what you have. Whereas your approach is now like, well, what if we just store that data and you can analyze it in the future if you'd like, right? Like, you can write a new query against it, and that data is still there, and you don't have to spend as much time, trying to think about it. So, no, I think that's definitely. I think that's probably what connected with me when we talked the first time. I was like, that's something about that really connected. Again, maybe it's because I'm more of a structured data person and, like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. But I think that was something that I really liked there. You've kind of mentioned a lot of, I think, terms that now get thrown around a lot, whether it's RAG, whether it's vector. How much do you think, let's say, especially like data people, whether you're data analysts, data engineers, need to understand those topics and those terms?
Yeah. I think it'll be crucial. Like, it'll be crucial. I think in the upcoming years, right? The reality is, data people is going to be more and more. Well, they have to like, get familiar with this concept and get their hands on the unstructured data. And in most of the applications we're seeing today is a chatbot. So, and of course the vector search which is what I think is a mini version of a Google search, where you don't need to spend too much time on building this Google search, but it just, like, have it for you. where your job is to basically making this like vectors representation of unstructured data and feed it for like business people or feed it for your product. Of course, the other piece is like the analysis, right? Which is still like very far topic for most people, right? How do you take the unstructured data and analyze that insights from it in a quantitative way? So and to learn that, right, there's actually more and more resources coming along, right? If you are a user of Snowflake, you could learn about the Cortex LLM functions. One example I really like is that I think more and more use cases is the customer service cost, right? If you're a data scientist, whatever job you haven't done before, but you can, is understand what are people discussing, what are people complaining about in your customer service center, in your contact center. What topics are they discussing? Are they complaining about a product? Are they complaining about a specific issue? Are they complaining about a payment or refund? You can kind of, you have this like power to extract this information in a really large scale and cluster it and present some visualization to your stakeholder. And part of it, right? You can try to learn Snowflake Cortex LLM functions to learn how to different prompting techniques, how to make sure the costs are, you get ROI. You can kind of cut the cost down with a smaller LLM. How do you fine tune a smaller LLM to cut the cost if you have, let's say, 1 billion rows of transcripts, stuff like that. So I think that's going to be a trend that's going to be just like going forward and forward, right? And because that's just like about the text, right? In the future, you have more modality of data. You have like videos. You potentially have the PDFs. Depends on the industries. You'd potentially going even further beyond the transcripts, right? Going into the audio directly, right? Now that you can use a Gemini model to extract the sentiments. By sentiments, I mean based on the tones when people speak, the wavelength. And going to more modality. And I think it's important for anyone in this age to have a learning for this new concept of data processors, essentially multimodality LLMs to do their jobs better.
Yeah. Kind of just looking back, it feels like when I first started in the data world, I want to say neural networks had like a revival, right? Like they'd existed for a long time, right? And then like somewhere in like, I don't know what it was. I just remember like every other article on Medium was like how to build a deep neural network like on your lunch break or something, or in 20 minutes. So it was a very, very funny period in content. I mean, it happens. Everyone starts kind of writing the same topics. How have you kind of seen like the data and ML world change over the last little bit? We're talking about LLMs and things like that, but how have you seen it kind of change in your experiences?
Yeah, I think back when I was at LinkedIn, it's the ML was, most of the models are basically a mix of the neural network and XGBoost trees, by the way, because LinkedIn cares about the explainability of the model a lot. To give a sense of what ML I've seen, I think it's better to go back to what business is doing. Well, LinkedIn is a social platform, just like Facebook, but different from Facebook. It does not make money by advertisement. It is not their like a main pillar. The core is by connecting the talents, and based on the best criteria and the recruiter seats is what they're making money off. Therefore, the core ML serves for making people recommendation systems better. And yeah, so just as anyone can imagine, a recommendation system, it's basically a very gigantic system maintained by a lot of engineers, L2 rankers, L1 rankers, and neural network framework architecture. And for Snowflake, it's sort of the data product that known for its simplicity, right? And it's making money by providing ways to analyze data. So so compared to LinkedIn, right? It basically built that mostly it's the gateway or the entry point, and it's built the ML infrastructure. And to the user, it's basically like operating a query interface, an operating system on for those complex hardwares. So they have time series forecasting function, and recently the Cortex family features a text SQL model and an LLM function. And it's a before GenAI, it's time series forecasting, classification, Bayesian inferencing, etc. So now it's very heavily shifting towards how do I replace or how do I assist or even replace this pre-Gen AI technology with the newer Gen AI model, right? For example, for most of the classification, topic sentiment classification, you could replace the old BERT models with Gen AI models. Yeah, the trend I've seen. And by the way, I think I have to mention, because I just recall this, is at LinkedIn, one of the first, like our team is probably one of the first who sort of proposed the first use case of transformer model back in 2020, late 2021 or 2022. I remember there was one engineer, I think he was still in a startup. He was in a startup right now. He jumped to Snapchat, but he proposed this where when I was in the team that builds the skills data and knowledge graph stuff, he was one who proposed, can we use a GPT-2 to auto-generate the skill assessment questions? And back then, our skill assessments, LinkedIn skill assessments, if anyone in the audience are remembering that, it's composed of 15 questions, and 100% of those questions are curated by a human team at LinkedIn. So he proposed, if we can learn the patterns of human creators and then generates a bank of questions based on the human creators as a baseline, can we completely automate this process and increase our bank questions to millions of questions, millions of variations? And back then it was like magic to all of us. It was like, how can a single model just generate human-like conversations? So that was my first contact with GPT.
Yeah, and suddenly it makes more sense why they have those collaborative articles where they're trying to get a bunch of people to talk about their stuff so that they can make articles in the future and not have anyone write them. But, it is what it is. It's you can't, to some degree. I think I wrote a post somewhere where it's like, you're either building some sort of LLM or you're the training for it, just kind of as a joke. But it's kind of hard to avoid at this point. That makes sense. I think one thing that I liked that you referenced earlier, in kind of your answer, was that early on, and maybe this still is the goal at LinkedIn, but explainability was kind of the goal. Is that something like, how do you see explainability changing in the world of like LLMs right nowadays? Like we're kind of getting, I think, a little better. Like when Google gives you an answer, they'll try to tell you where it came from. But how do you think that kind of is impacted as we kind of go into models that are feel even more black boxy than some of the prior models?
Yeah. Well, that's a really hard question, Ben. It's I have to admit the explainability is one of the things that LLM is that makes LLM so powerful, but also make it so vulnerable to hallucinations. So the way like people. Well, first of all, when answer we ask ChatGPT a question, it gives a confident answer that might be completely wrong, and you have nowhere to trace it back. And people would argue that, well, for example, if you ask like a fact, who in World War II, right, and it could give a completely nonsense answer. I mean, of course, right now it's like no LLM could give that answer, but you got to trust the company behind it to do the right RLHF and the right red team efforts to basically shift the responsibility to the company behind it, Facebook, right? And then that's where I saw recently there was pretty much a debate between should you regulate the bigger models or should you regulate the smaller models in California? And there's a bill just passed, signed by the city governor.
Was it vetoed or did it pass? Because I didn't actually read. I just saw an article this morning, but I didn't actually read it. It says vetoed. So
yeah, Newsom vetoed it. Yeah. So his take is like we shouldn't just regulate the bigger models, but the smaller models are also vulnerable, which I'm pretty much agreeing with, right? Because smaller models, open source models in the open community, they're like pretty much not guardrailed by any red team efforts. Anyone can just fine tune like a harmful model and just ship it to the world. So that's a thing. And people, well, there are mitigations of that explainability, which is ask the LLM to explain where to get information from. So, which is a very popular paradigm that adopted by a lot of startups today who build the AI softwares. Right, kind of give a reference of if you're analyzing PDF, just give a reference of the PDF paragraph. If you're well, there's no way to do that if you're just asking about a fact in the world. It's just one of the internal knowledge compression in this new network. There you just lose the track. Yeah, but that's a reality we're facing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of interesting realities we're facing, whether it be trying to deal with explainability, whether it be the fact that we have to turn 3 Mile Island back on because we need more power to manage all of these LLMs. And I think I was just talking to someone where they made the joke that's like, yeah, I used LLM to generate whatever this meme, and all it cost was like burning down the rainforest or something was the trade-off. So we'll see where things go in terms of long term. But speaking of long term, like, do you have any thoughts in terms of where you see data kind of going in the next few years? I won't say 10 years because 10 years is too long, but like maybe like 4 to 5-ish years.
Yeah. Well, I think I have. I would say maybe I want to make like 2 predictions. I haven't been proven to be wrong, but I deeply believe it would be the case. First of all, I think just because the LLM can solve the unstructured data, I really want to emphasize the word solve. It doesn't mean there will be less unstructured data. On the contrary, I believe there will be way more unstructured data generated in the future than ever before.
Yeah.
Of course, one is the new startup, the new app, the new chatbot are generating the unstructured data. But I think on the other hand, it's like people realize the power of this small the LLM, and they will naturally just record more unstructured data in their systems. Like for example, more people would just prefer to put the data in the PDF because they know it can be analyzed anyways, right? It's like when Amazon is created, there are more, there are like look at this like 20 years, there are more merchants than ever before. When Starlink is created, right? The satellites you can operate your cell phone or your network in anywhere in the world. People can buy more houses in the rural area. It's like this drives the needs in reverse. And so that's the first prediction that I'll make. There'll be way more unstructured than ever before in the future. People will find valuable. The second prediction, I think, is like more data organization will become more comfortable with data staying in a relatively unstructured format, and analyze it and process it when needed. That kind of goes back to my previous example where people are just rushing the data to the structured format. Just feel like there is no tomorrow. And I think when the LLMs becomes cheaper, that it can just pretty much similar to the CPU compute, and there will be a day like this. People will just prefer to sleep with unstructured data more often than usual before. So when they have the video, when they have the lots of PDFs in hand, they're not rushing to extract the structured data points from there and do the data modeling, but instead they just start analyzing it when it's needed, and they'll be very comfortable with operating that way.
Yeah, I like the point about there like being this need to collect more unstructured data. I think one thing you always see, right, is as we create like it's probably a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, because we had kind of at some point there was like big data, right? Whatever, everyone's like looking for a dupe and things like that to process it because it's too expensive to try to manage on a different solution. And then it got too complex, and then things like Snowflake, Spark, Databricks, etc., all kind of came out, right? And that, like one person said, like we've kind of solved a lot of the technical friction there, especially on structured data. But all that does is then make us want to collect more data, right? Like it's like, okay, cool. Now that we can do more, we can maybe answer more. And I think that's something that, yeah, like maybe you'll see that like, oh wait, we can analyze foot traffic in our retail store even more easily, right? We already have video cameras videoing all of it, depending on states and policies and data privacy laws. It's like, yeah, well, can I now run queries to say like how many people are in a store literally just from my camera or something, or what aisles do people mostly congregate around? I'm sure they already have this in more complex methods, right? Via we've had computer vision for a long time, so I'm sure this already exists. But now you can just turn it into a SQL query, or now you can just turn it into something like an LLM. And there's some value in storing it. I think that suddenly makes people want to capture more of that data, and then eventually they want to capture it in better detail or capture like even more information on it. Because I think that's something that you've often seen that it is one of the complaints sometimes. Like let's say retail is an example, where let's say with Amazon, if you go to Amazon, we can track the aisle you've been in, the things you put in your cart, the things you put back out of your cart. And now it's like, well, what if I could do that from a camera? Like it's like, oh, what if I could like track someone throughout the process? Obviously Amazon's tried to do it already, obviously not successfully, but it might become something that like in the future it's like, hey, if we can actually answer this retail problem where it's like we watch where people go and know what they do. Creepy, but it is something that like they will do, as long as it's legal, they will do it.
Totally. And one other example I want to just add on to the color is add some color on is like in the high tech software company. If you probably know this, there's not too much unstructured data that teams are tracking, right? But now with the power of a large video model, essentially what I've seen people are doing is start tracking the user session replays as the video format.
Oh yeah.
And as a way to sort of instead of like launching A/B testing and you're trying to reconstruct the whole story based on the telemetry, you can just look at the videos of how users are using your product and why they're not clicking that button, or why they are just prefer to just drop off when see something. And you can let AI to kind of tell you what's going on, and that if AI can do it at scale, then you get a scalable, you get a quantitative insights, just as A/B testing.
Yeah.
So that's equivalent to be powerful, and that they will come. Right? People will never throw away their full story recordings and in the future. It's like people will never throw away their user customer service recordings in the future after transcribe it into a text. Right? They can just analyze the audio.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good case, because I have a friend right now who's trying out building a company, and he'll show me the videos. He'll be like, look at this. This is, I watched exactly how they work. So I think there's something there as well. That's an interesting thought. Someone does have a question. So this is more on the small and medium business side. So they work with small and medium businesses that still work paper and PDFs. Do you see any solutions being applied to those markets?
Yeah, I mean, we our company currently focuses on the document problems. So in the financial and in the manufacturing and in a bit of retail. So yeah, we'd love to have a chat for that. Our solution can pretty much take a bunch of PDFs in your S3 bucket or Google Drive. You can start asking questions. It's quite interoperable to data architecture, interpretable, and quite scalable.
Nice. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I imagine the question becomes like what size, budget, things like that. But I think you guys are still early on, so you might be able to, try out, see how you can be helpful. No, but what was I just? I think one. Are there any other use cases that you're really kind of seeing this take, or like this general idea work, like unstructured data and analyzing it, whether it's with obviously your company, but just in general, where are you seeing this kind of be successful?
You mean just want to confirm, you mean the general like unstructured analysis?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I think one thing we've seen is um, like one of the future we've seen. I would just mention the stuff we're already solving, but I think it's just there's going to be a tremendous need someday in the future, not too far, which is we have created all this kind of different kind of chatbots that are operating in every company, in every team, and they're collecting basically like chat history, right? And within this chat histories, that can be multimodality data. You can have text, you can have like images, videos, or like whatnot. But imagine if you're like a product manager and you want to understand what people are talking about, what features they're mentioning. If you're operating an app, that chatbot that are basically automating some of the functions on your platform, are you really curious about some questions, what they're doing in their platform, in this chatbot platform? The current data tool, are not a good fit for this at all. It does not fit in the conversations with like multimodal data, right? No one has solved this problem, but like everyone is generating this problem. I think there will be a day where data people are like, "Holy shit, I could not deal with this anymore. Like I could not analyze a million of chat histories like mixed with like all kinds of random things. I gotta need something that helps me to go back to the abstraction principle, right? I gotta have something that abstract away this like software manual data processing for me and just help me answer the question. So I think that's going to be a exciting use case that I'm personally excited about for my company, and also welcome other competitors, other players in the market to chime in, because it's going to be a very big market. We're going to enter in a world where you have to analyze the data between the human and AI.
Yeah. I like you said earlier, I think I can only imagine the space grows. I don't remember what the paradox is. I feel like there was like some paradox that someone referenced where the more insights you have, the more insights you want, where it's just like this perpetual loop where it's like there's not going to be an end. Like as soon as you can answer some set of questions, you just have more questions. And then you have more questions. And then especially if you have access to more data and can ask it more questions, it just kind of continues on and on. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of, we're getting here to the top of the hour. Just want to see, do you have any final thoughts, any final questions before we kind of wrap up?
Well, yeah, maybe the turntable a little bit to you.
Sure.
I guess, Ben. Throughout Hooker, I think your most of the topic sessions you've done is about structured data. What's your vision about? What's your vision in terms of how this like wave of LLMs will transform how data engineering will operate?
Yeah, I think I guess there's a few places I imagine it impacts things. Like one, obviously, is how we work. Whether that's helping us, I think, do more thorough work. At least it has the opportunity to. Like we can do better documentation, we can do better data modeling. We have more of that time. Because one of the things that's happened in the last maybe decade is data engineers have been pushed back, like to put out things faster and faster and faster, which then often makes us, put out worse models, not think about things as thoroughly, not put out as much documentation. So I think there's that aspect where the one risk being that companies will just now want things faster. But if they could expect things at the same speed that they have been, for a solid data team, now we can hopefully take the time to do some of those things better. It may take some time to spend on data quality more. But then the other thing, and I think Joe Reese has talked about this, is that data modeling in particular won't just refer to the structured data, but it will also have this aspect even more so of unstructured data, where it's like, how are you preparing unstructured data to be analyzed, right? Because and are you preparing it for people or machines or both? I think that's kind of the other thing, is like, I imagine there's going to be a future where it is both, where some things will be for machines that will be processing this data and doing tons of automated tasks on it. But you also then need to translate it into a way that there will still be people on the other end who will either ask more questions or do something with it, that we currently, are just starting to kind of scratch the surface of, like you said, like whether it's parsing PDFs. I've done that a few times. For example, I had a client that what are they? They're like a kind of like a they track a lot of the stuff that goes on in the legal worlds, like in terms of like House of Representatives, new policies being created, new laws being created, and they like work on trying to categorize it and improve and look at PDFs, etc. And now you can make that even easier. And so I think there's just a lot of these layers where people are already trying to process things like PDFs, and so like creating this world where things are easier to ingest and model, and then build a layer that people can interact with more easily, I think is kind of this future that we're going towards. Because that's always what I view data engineers trying to do, is we just try to take data that is hard to work with. Again, in the past, mostly for people, but now in the future for people and machines, and make it easy for people to understand, and make it easy for machines to understand, so that they can get the best results. And I think that's the real change we'll see, is like that will become easier and easier, and it will become a necessity. It won't just be like, hey, this is nice to have. It's like, I mean, if you work at a big organization that has all this unstructured data, it will just become more and more valuable.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Awesome.
It's a nice wrap up.
Yeah, hopefully that's a nice wrap up. Thanks for everyone for watching. Hopefully, if you have any questions more on unstructured data, you can reach out to Richard. I think he's on LinkedIn or on the YouTube. There should be a link to Richard, and then also Ro if you'd like to learn more. But other than that, any final thoughts, Richard?
No, this is good. Yeah, if you have any questions, of course, reach out to Ben as well. Ben is the expert in this domain.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I'm gonna hit end stream.